One of the things about professors that's most impressive is how they know so much and are so ineffective. How can somebody who knows so much be so ineffective? But that's what a professor is. That's their profession. And then that gap inspires students to do something with that knowledge when they get access to fractions of it from the professor. This is about liberal arts. This is a small video about liberal arts. I'm going to talk about the liberal arts of engineering, the liberal arts of business, the liberal arts of quality, the liberal arts of design, creation, invention, the liberal arts of innovation, the liberal arts of management and leadership, the liberal arts of interfaces and intellectual tools, the liberal arts of communicating and influence, liberal arts of culture, liberal arts of system thinking, liberal arts of career making, liberal arts of self-development, self-management, the liberal arts of risk, chance, and ventures, and the liberal arts of social relationships and social neuroscience. Now, all of them benefit greatly from being reviewed from the point of view of the liberal arts, history, literature, philosophy, and art. And I'm talking about an extremely sophisticated rendition of literature, philosophy, history, and art. But to be honest, at top 10 colleges, the average professor of those fields is breathtakingly interesting and useful. And it's almost hard not to have your life changed just by 2 or 3 lectures in no matter how badly given. Um, the fact is that the liberal arts are grounded in really, really, really other cultures that are not our culture. And so it's a real anthropological, one of the few, Star Wars and Star Trek were real anthropological experiences for young boys, mostly, some young girls. And, they were other worlds with other rules, with other ways. And they were one culture constantly meeting another culture, and people with 6 arms meeting people with 9 arms, and people with eyes meeting people without eyes, and inorganic life forms meeting giant ugly bags of water. You've got to really know that episode. And uh, and therefore they were liberal arts. So I'm really talking about Star Trek, but Greece and Rome in Western culture history were extremely other cultures to what we have today, amazingly other. And I think one of the first reasons I was fascinated by them in junior high and elementary school was the otherness of them as worlds, complete worlds, but other. Corresponding components for everything that we have, but every component was different, and the system of interlocking among components was very different. And that fascinated me because it gave me a way to be outside of my ways and world and look at my ways and world from another point of view, from an outside point of view, outsider point of view. And I grew up in a very bigoted part of the world with very ignorant people around me, and it was really, really healthy for my mind to be able to get away from them and look at a different way of looking at the world and different worlds that would view my world differently than the bigoted, ignorant people around me viewed it. Now, the liberal arts of engineering is really a matter of uh, engineers lacking the ability to handle power and money, and engineers unable to design, so they don't do any engineering their whole career. They basically tweak subcomponents for recombination. And Steve Jobs uh, rated about this and prated about this and said that the Apple engineers were not engineering at all. They were just tweaking subsystems for recombination. And he wanted them to do real engineering for their pay and not just to tweak subsystems for recombination. And when new technologies went into Apple products, he wanted to know what these new technologies can actually be made to do, and not just take the simplest, shortest thing that impression people have. The liberal arts of business, engineers hide behind equations of math and design, basically second order differential equations, a kind of arithmetic. And MBAs hide among economic equations. Now, the liberal arts of business is spotting psychopaths and helping psychopaths spot the fact that they're psychopaths. Because so many people, especially in the Anglo culture forms of business, are psychopaths. That's why they go into business. That's what business schools try to collect as students. And then they send them to Wall Street to steal money from old ladies and the baby boomer generation pension funds in the name of gambling with deposits. Uh, and then they have economic theories to justify why that sort of somehow vaguely, they never talk about how, it vaguely helps the economy to lose $13 trillion every 20 years from giant theft from Harvard grads. So business is evil, and business people go into business to be evil. at least at the top business schools like Harvard. And they generate largely evil in terms of their actual measured results as evil. We don't have, and then Silicon Valley is quite different. Silicon Valley is the same number of people, equally bright, generating 8 times more for GDP than Wall Street generates, and not losing all that money every 20 years in theft. And so you've got on the West Coast, you've got elite, smart people building the world and changing the world in history and the lives of ordinary people. And then on Wall Street, you've got the same kind of eliteness ruining the world and stealing from people every 20 years. And so Harvard's generating this evil set of results, while Stanford is generating this beneficial set of results. Now, is it the water? I don't think so. I think the people over there on the East Coast are evil. And I think the people on the West Coast have refused to be evil. Henderson, the head of Stanford, went to Manhattan to consider putting a Stanford Engineering School section there at the request of New York City, which wanted to create a kind of East Coast Silicon Valley. And they were so shitty in their treatment of him, so ugly in their treatment of him, so East Coasty, uh, throwing him before lawyers with contracts which said anything goes wrong, you pay, not us. Anything goes wrong, you pay, not us. Right up front. This is the East Coast way of doing business. And Henderson vomited. He just puked. And he said, I don't want to spend the last years of my life sitting across from the table arguing with morons like this. This is why the East Coast doesn't have a Silicon Valley already, is they torture each other with lawyers and risk and old money, making sure they control completely any new money so it doesn't do anything to hurt them. And, that's why they don't have a Silicon Valley. And take a piece of Stanford and stick it over among these evil Harvard morons is not going to create new technology on the East Coast. It's just going to get itself assimilated to the morons there. So he quit in the middle, said, to hell with it. Stanford's not doing this, and let some guys in Israel do it. The guys in Israel, the only guys mean and masculine and warlike enough to sit here and do continual battle with the guys in Manhattan and win. So you're going to have the more evil morons from Harvard in Manhattan and the evil guys from Technion doing total fights with lawyers together for 20 years and calling it technology. It's going to be a joke. And, the fact that New York thought that you could take their ugly, vile culture and way of treating each other and then build trust and free-flowing ideas and ventures with it shows how utterly out of it the East Coast of the U.S. is, just hopelessly culturally stupid. And it shows how naive the leaders of the West Coast were, who didn't realize what a real ugly mess they escaped from when they moved 3,000 miles to California. That was really cool. That's the liberal arts of business. Liberal arts of quality. Liberal arts of design invention, liberal arts of innovation, liberal arts of management and leadership, liberal arts of interfaces and intellectual tools, liberal arts of, it's the history of all of these fields. Think about the history of interfaces and intellectual tools. Think about the history of management and leadership regimes. Think about the history of ways of innovating. Think about the history of design approaches. Think about the history of quality and the definitions of quality and ways to achieve quality. Think about the history of culture. Think about the history of systems thinking. Think about the history of career definition, contents, and management and design. Career design. Think about the history of self-development. What a good self was in Montaigne's era. What a good self was in Seneca's era. What a good self was in Rousseau's era. What a good self was in the 18th century, etc. And now, then think about the philosophy of all that. What's debt 1,000 years ago? What's debt 500 years ago? What's debt now? What's profit 2,000 years ago? What's profit 1,500 years ago? What's profit in this culture? What's profit in that culture? We think we know what these words mean, but their meaning has been enormously different in different cultures at the same time and in different times of history. The literature, and then the stories of, the bios of, the stories of engineering, the stories, Project X's, where engineers keep a project secret for 5 generations of management until they succeed at changing the world within. None of these dumb short-term MBA psychopath managers would have funded it. The literature of culture, of people discovering their own culture, discovering that they don't like their own culture, discovering how to improve their own culture, discovering other cultures around them, discover cultures they marry that they didn't realize were other, out of their blindness and arrogance. The literature of self-development. Now, we get a lot of that, so that's kind of already done. The literature of risk, chance, and ventures. And this is cool. We don't have a literature on business venturing, but Japan has a literature on business venturing, and Germany is developing a literature on business venturing. And even Italy has got some fiction developing on business venturing in Italy. And so you wonder why the Americans can't do the literature of business. Um, the and so in all of these cases, the need for art, the need for literature, the need for philosophy, the need for history is apparent. And to get fully functioning versions of these, you need to have the stories of present time, the stories of past literature, the stories of past time history, and the stories of future time fantasy, and art, and the philosophy of these.